Good morning. Giri, slides. Yeah, good morning to one and all. Today's topic is typhus and leptospirosis. These two diseases are the most undiagnosed diseases in India. Let's see them in each in detail. So you can, these are the main culprit in this, both the diseases, rodents. Today we'll discuss the topics under these following side headings: like introduction, historical perspective, epidemiology and Indian scenario, pathogenesis, clinical features and complications, approach to the disease, management, prevention and control. Coming to the introduction, typhus. Typhus, there are three variants like epidemic typhus, endemic typhus and scrub typhus. Coming to scrub typhus, it is common in India, so we'll discuss in detail about scrub typhus. It is also known as Japanese river fever. It is associated with the jungle mite or shiger, termed as Susugamushi in Japanese. It is zoonotic infection with humans being accidental or dead and hosts. Historical perspective, rickettsial infection has been one of the greatest scourges of mankind, occurring in devastating epidemics during times of war and famine. Even during Indo-Pak War, it has affected the India. Hippocrates in 1460 BC used the term typhus, meaning smoke, to describe the confused state of the intellect, a tendency to stupor associated with high fevers. Usually a patient affected with typhus, they will be in a confused state of mind. That is what Hippocrates described in 460 BC. Coming to geographic distribution, Susugamushi triangle, you can see the area it is more prone, like India, Southeast Asia, and the Asian Pacific Rim or Northern Australia. These are more prone areas. Primary reservoir, it is transmitted by bite of infected larvae of the torbiculid mite, that is shigers. They feed on lymph and tissue fluid rather than blood. Despite of the meats, mite leaves a characteristic black eschar. I'll show you the eschar in the following slides, which are the classical signs for scrub typhus fever. Rodents are the natural reservoir. Earlier, it was thought that the rodents were a natural reservoir infection, but it is now believed that mites are both the vector and the reservoir. This is the life cycle. You can see normally the larvae or sugar feeds on the small mammals or ground feeding birds. The engorged larva enters or developed into adult, and they release eggs, and again they infect the humans. It's a cyclical process. These are the common sugars habitats like grasslands, rice fields, moist areas around the house with the shrubs. The pathogenesis is vasculitis, like organism divides and breeds within the phagocytes, where when it escapes from the cell back into the circulation, there it proliferates on the endothelium of small blood vessels, and they release cytokines which damage the endothelial integrity and leak and fluid leak, platelet aggregation, polymorphs and monocyte proliferation will be there, which further leads to focal occlusive anxieties, ultimately causing microinfarcts in the blood vessels. The usual incubation period for this scrub typhus is 7 to 21 days, with a mean of 10 to 12 days. Clinical presentation, a painless papule occurs at the bite site, and which later ulcerates and transforms into black crust or eschar in a variable proportion of patients. It is often difficult to spot in darker individuals, and eschar is moist. Intergenous surfaces may be missed if not looked into carefully. It means you have to look for a thorough clinical and physical examination. If you don't look for eschar, you might miss it. Eschar might be in axial or chest or back, even in the gluteal region, scrotal region. Unless you have a high index of suspicion, you can't look for a Escher. So these are the few locations of Escher. You can have a look at it. And the other one is maculopapular rash. Appears at the end of first week, lasts for 3 to 7 days. The typical locations are chest, abdomen, whole trunk, or upper and lower limbs. Rarely involves the face, palms, and so on. Initially, the rash is a form of pink blanching discrete macule, which subsequently becomes maculopapular, petechial, or hemorrhagic. Here on your right side, you can see the maculopapular rash on the chest. Lymphadenopathy. Usually, regional lymphadenopathy occurs by the end of the first week, which is localized, like the draining lymph node may be the primary Escher, characterized by tenderness and enlargement of the lymph node. Generalized lymphadenopathy appears 2 to 3 days after the regional lymphadenopathy. Clinical features: there will be abrupt onset of fever associated with myalgia, severe headache, suffused conjunctiva, drowsiness, and apathy. A reversible sensory neural deafness is also seen in few cases. And coming to the complications, the more virulent strains of Tsutsugamishi can cause respiratory illness like interstitial pneumonitis, pneumonia, or with ARDS. Coming to cardiac involvement, it can cause toxic myocarditis. Hematological, it causes thrombocytopenia, pancytopenia, disseminated intravascular coagulation. Whereas coming to neuropsychiatric, it can cause meningitis, encephalitis, cochlear component of the eighth nerve involvement, and transverse myelitis. Coming to the abdominal complications, it can lead to acute hepatic failure, acute renal failure, GI bleeding, para-aortic or portohepatic, and splenic hilar lymphadenopathy. These are the common clinical complications. We can see it affects almost all the systems like respiratory, cardiac, hematological, neuropsychiatric, and abdominal. So coming to the diagnosis, how do you diagnose this? It's a Weil-Felix test we do it commonly in a general practice. ELISA-based test, particularly immunoglobulin M capture assays, molecular diagnosis by PCR, and indirect immunoperoxidase assay and immunofluorescence assay. These are the gold standard tests for the scrub typhus. Coming to the Weil-Felix interpretation, scrub typhus, you can see OXK will be positive and OX2 and OX19 are negative. Whereas in epidemic or endemic typhus, OX2 and OXK are negative and OX19 will be positive. Coming to Indian tick typhus, that is spotted fever, only OXK is negative and OX2 and OX19 are positive. You consider it as a possible infection only if the titers are 1:80 and above. IgM and IgG ELISA, these are the techniques particularly where the immunoglobulin G capture assays from serum, probably the most sensitive test available for recurrential diagnosis. A significant IgM titer is observed at the end of first week. So you must always order for investigation after 1 week of fever. And IgG antibodies appear at the end of second week. Other supportive laboratory investigations or the total count will be elevated, often more than 11,000. There will be a thrombocytopenia that is less than 1 lakh in majority of the cases, but not in all the cases. There will be raised transaminase levels, which is a common feature. Chest X-ray might be showing infiltrates, mostly bilateral. Here you can see the upper X-ray, the bilateral basal region, you can see the infiltrates, white shadows. Whereas after the treatment, you can see the prominent, the shadows are disappeared, which means the patient has recovered from the pulmonary infection or infiltrates. And you must rule out the other infections, common infections which mimic like this scrub typhus, like other arenaviruses, where the temperature will be more than 38 degrees with lymphadenopathy, rash, leukopenia, thrombocytopenia, convulsions might be there. and leptospira, other disease which commonly mimics like scrub typhus. The differentiating feature will be the jaundice, splenomegaly, leukocytosis, and thrombocytopenia. Coming to other rickettsial infections, like acute fever, headache, myalgia, nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, diarrhea, and rash. Hantaviruses, where leukocytosis, neutrophilia, thrombocytopenia. The normal ESR, atypical lymphomonocytes will be there. Malaria, there will be intermittent fever with chills, hemolytic anemia, normal or increased ESR with splenomegaly. Dengue and chikungunya also, it mimics like scrub typhus. The pruritic rash, leukopenia, lymphocytosis, normal ESR with or without thrombocytopenia. You must always bear in mind the other diagnosis also before coming to the diagnosis, before coming to scrub typhus. When you say the patient has a suspected or clinical case, when the patient is having acute undifferentiated febrile illness for 5 days or more, with or without Eschar, and has a high suspicion of rickettsial infection. The Eschar is present, fever of less than 5 days duration should be considered of scrub typhus. The other presenting features like headache, rash, lymphadenopathy, multi-organ involvement like fever, kidney, and lung involvement. When you have the above features, then you can say a suspected or a clinical case. Coming to the probable case, you must have all the findings of clinical case, along with the titers of 180, 1:80 or above of OX2, OX19, and OXK antigens by Biel-Felix test, and optical density of more than 0.5 for IgM by ELISA. If you have these two, along with the suspected clinical case findings, then you can say it as a probable case. Confirmed case, obviously when you have a DNA detection in Eschar samples, you say it as a confirmed case, or a rising antibody titers on acute and convalescent sera detected by IFA or IPA. When you have these both, or either of the both, you can say it as a confirmed case. Treatment. Without waiting for the laboratory confirmation of the rickettsial infection, antibiotic therapy should be instituted when rickettsial disease is suspected. So in a prebiotic area, mortalities are variable, approach around 60%. Now we have a broad range of antibiotics with greater efficacy, and so antibiotic therapy brings about prompt disappearance of the fever and dramatic clinical improvement. A rapid difference after antibiotic treatment is so characteristic that it is used as a diagnostic test for Tsutsumushi infection. So at different levels, the treatment is different. The PHC level, for less severe cases, we give a doxycycline, 200 mg twice, the 2 divided doses, that is 100 mg per day for 7 days. Or azithromycin, 500 mg for 5 days, once daily. Whereas coming to children, it's 4.5 mg per kg body weight in 2 divided doses for 7 days. Or azithromycin, 100 mg per kg body weight in a single dose for 5 days. Whereas coming to the pregnant individual, doxycycline is contraindicated, so we go for azithromycin 500 mg in as a single oral dose for 5 days. At the PHC levels, if the patient develops complications, then we have to refer to a secondary or tertiary center. What are the complications usually encountered in a case of typhus? Respiratory, ARDS or ARF, acute kidney injury, or meningoencephalitis or multi-organ dysfunction. If you come across these complications, then we have to refer to a higher center. So doxycycline should be initiated before referring the patient. In addition to recommended management of community-acquired pneumonia, doxycycline is to be initiated when scrub typhus is considered likely. What do we do in a secondary or tertiary center? We administer IV doxycycline 100 mg twice daily in 100 ml normal saline for duration of 7 to 15 days, or IV azithromycin 500 mg IV in a 250 ml of normal saline over 1 hour once daily for 1 to 2 days, followed by an oral therapy for 5 days. IV chloramphenicol 5 to 100 mg per kg per day, 6 hours, 6 hourly. Doses to be administered for as an infusion over 1 hour initially, followed by oral therapy to complete 7 to 15 days of therapy. This is a treatment protocol in an higher center or a tertiary care center like a college or a hospital. What is a prophylaxis? How do you prevent the disease? This is usually recommended under endemic oral chloramphenicol or tetracycline given once every 5 days for 35 days or weekly doses of doxycycline during and for 6 weeks after the exposure. A resistance to the antibiotics has been noted in several areas. Therefore, prophylaxis with antibiotics cannot be guaranteed. How do we prevent? We can prevent only by protective clothing, using insect repellents that avoid shinger bites. Do not sit or lie on bare ground or grassy areas. Clearing the vegetation and chemical treatment of the soil may help to break up the cycle of transmission from sugars to humans to other sugars. So to conclude or consolidate the whole class, Krabbe typhus is an re-emerging disease in India. It is an important cause of community-acquired undifferentiated febrile illness. It has to be considered as a differential diagnosis of sepsis or multi-organ dysfunction. Failure of early diagnosis is associated with significant mortality and morbidity, and also leads to an expensive pyrexia of unknown origin workup. Research for an eschar in hidden areas of the body. This you must bear in mind always. You must look for an thorough physical examination. If it is a male patient, never feel shy to undress the patient and look for eschar when you suspect for an Krabbe typhus. Screening for wheel flix and diagnosis by IgM Krabbe typhus ELISA. Whenever you suspect the case, go for the wheel flix. Don't delay, as the patient might deteriorate, and treat the patient at the earliest when you have a high suspicion with the doxycycline, which may stop the disease for further progression. And coming to the next topic, like leptospirosis, is the other disease which is the most undiagnosed or underdiagnosed in our country. This is a zoonotic disease caused by like spirochete leptospirae, historically known as Weil's disease, described by Rudolf Weil in the year 1985, with a clinical hallmarks of splenomegaly, jaundice, and nephritis. Morphology: all the species are morphologically identical, tightly and regularly coiled with hooks and highly motile along the longitudinal axis. Here you can see the structure. This is a spirochete under the electron microscope. This is how it looks like, spirally longitudinal. So epidemiologically, it's a zoonotic disease. There is no human-to-human transmission. It's only zoonotic. It transmits from host rats, dogs, cattle, or pigs. Common transmission. Other domestic animals like dogs are the temporary carrier, or rodents are the permanent carrier. That is why I've shown this rodent picture in the initial first slide. Rodents are therefore considered the major reservoir for infection. Rats associated with L. interrogans, cerovates, ictrohemorrhagic, and Copenhagen are mostly associated with Weil's disease. These are transmitted through contact with infected animal urine and other Ascarita. Contact may be direct or indirect. Direct is when you directly come in contact with the animal urine, or indirect is through the surface water or moist soil. This is a picture showing how the humans get infected and how the cycle continues. The rodents are the primary carriers. The leptospira is shed through the urine of the rodents, which enters the soil or water. When the humans accidentally go for a watery sport, fishing, bathing, or swimming, they get infected through the abrasions or direct intact skin. They get infected, and then the patient and the other organisms like goats, dogs, they act as a reservoirs. And when the domestic animals shed the leptospira, again we get infected. by butchering, hunting, or farming, and the cycle continues. Leptospirosis has been underreported and underdiagnosed, as we have already told. Lack of awareness is the main cause for the underreported, underdiagnosed. Lack of appropriate laboratory diagnostic facilities in most other parts of the country. In urban setup, we do get all the tests, but we're coming to the rural setups, we don't get this high-end tests. So coming to the pathogenesis, infects through mucosa, conjunctival, and or oral, or through abraded skin, where the organism proliferate in bloodstream and disseminate hematogenously, and develops antibodies within the first 5 to 7 days. That organism disappears from the blood, but remains in the organs including brain, liver, lung, heart, and kidneys. We'll see how these other organs get affected in the coming slides. And there is the organism escapes, transfers interstitial space of the kidneys, later penetrate basement membrane, and get adherent to the proximal tubule epithelial cells and get excreted through the urine. Produce endotoxins, gets attached onto the endothelial cells, which leads to capillary vasculitis, and the vasculitis and leakage in turn causes petechiae, intraparenchymal bleeding along the serosa and mucosa. That is nothing but oral bleeding will be there. I'll show you the pictures in the coming slides. Loss of fluids into the third space, which ultimately leads to hypovolemic shock and vascular collapse. Clinical features can be a subclinical infection, or undifferentiated febrile illness, or it can be a Weil's disease. Incubation period is usually 2 to 30 days with an average of 5 to 14 days. It is classically described as a biphasic fever. The acute phase lasts for 3 to 10 days, where the leptospiremia will be there, blood culture will be positive. The fever responds to antibiotics. And the second phase is immune phase. Fever does not respond to antibiotics, and you can only isolation from urine can be made. Physical examination, conjunctival suffusion will be there. Jaundice you can make out. Pharyngeal erythema without exudate will be there. Rashes, that is maculopapular erythematous, petechial, or ecchymotic. It can be any of the above rash. Tenderness, muscular tenderness, myalgia will be there. Rales in the lungs, like patient will be breathless. Meningitis will be there. Patient will be in confused state or altered sensorium. Hyporeflexia or areflexia also can be there. Patient will be complaining of extreme myopathy, inability to walk, or weakness. These are the pictures showing the conjunctival suffusion. You can see the redness, conjunctival congestion kind of thing. These are the rash. You can see the maculopapular rash or ecchymotic rash. To the right, you can see the red rashes. Weil's disease. When you say it's a Weil's disease, the most severe form of this leptospirosis is known as a Weil's disease. It is monophasic and fulminant. Variable combination of jaundice, acute kidney injury, hypertension, and hemorrhage can be there. In liver, coming to the liver, it causes fulminant hepatitis-like picture and acute hepatitis-like picture. There will be splenomegaly also can be there. Coming to the acute kidney injury, it can cause acute tubular necrosis type of picture. Patient may be olguric or anuric also. Some patients might eventually land up in hemodialysis. Hemorrhage also can be there. Pulmonary hemorrhage is the most common finding in Weil's disease. Patient will be presented to you with shortness of breath. They might eventually land up on ventilator also if the patient is treated lately or presented lately to the hospital. Multi-system involvement also might occur. Coming to other manifestations, coming to cardiac, patient might be having myocarditis. Whereas neurological manifestations like aseptic meningitis, hypo or areflexia can be there. Now, ocular involvement, uveitis might be present. Skeletal muscles, severe myalgia or cough muscles, and abdominal muscles tenderness, abdominal muscles myalgia can be there. Cholecystitis can be there. Pancreatitis can cause hypo or hyperglycemia. These are the other clinical manifestations you must bear in mind when you come across a case of leptospirosis. Diagnosis: a high index of suspicion is critical in a setting of an appropriate exposure history, infections, protein in manifestations. Thorough history must be taken whether the patient has traveled anywhere or he traveled or did any swimming in the open sources. Are there any pets in the house? Are there any rodents in the house? You must always inquire for the surroundings. Are the surroundings clean and clear? By a thorough biochemical hematological and urine analysis may suggest, but not specific for diagnosis of the leptospirosis. The disease is usually diagnosed by detecting antibodies using various serological tests, culturing the bacteria from blood, urine, and tissues, demonstrating the presence of leptospirosis in tissues using antibodies labeled with fluorescent markers by PCR immunostaining. Cultures take many weeks and cannot guide clinical care. Direct microscopy of blood and urine are not recommended. This is how it looks like in dark field microscopy, the leptospira. This is a immunohistochemical demonstration of leptospira in a kidney tissue. You can see the leptospira. It's well marked. Serological test, MAT, microscopic agglutination test, is a gold standard with a sensitivity of 92% and specificity of 95%. The MAT has a very limited availability. That is the only drawback. Gene-specific or rapid tests include ELISA, macroscopic slide agglutination test, latex agglutination test. We do get a diptych test like a leptodiptych lipstick or leptotech lateral flow, and other tests like leptotech dry dot test and indirect hemagglutination test. These tests are simple, more sensitive, and become positive earlier than MAT, like within the first 5 to 6 days of onset of fever. You can detect the specific IgM antibodies. Use saprophytic leptospira as antigens. They use, and they are commercially available. It's a easy test. You can do it. They can be done in any small laboratory, in any setup. We can get those tests. Isolations: leptospirosis can be cultured from the blood and CSF during the first 7 to 10 days. Urine culture usually begin in the second week. May take up to 2 to 4 weeks to be positive. Urine cultures remain positive for many months or years despite therapy. How do you approach the diagnosis of leptospirosis? When you have a clinical features which are suggestive of current leptospirosis, and if you suspect, then you go for and you divide the patient into 2 phases, either whether the patient is in leptospiremic phase, that is less than 7 days, or immune phase, or that is more than 7 days of fever. If the patient is in leptospiremic phase, go for blood culture or PCR. No, if the patient is in immunophase, that is more than 7 days of fever, you go for a rapid test. The rapid tests are negative, you wait for 3 days and repeat the test. The test turn out to be positive, then you go for MAT. If MAT turns to be negative, you repeat the test, then it shows the seroconversion. The MAT is positive, and there is a high titers. Repeat after the treatment, and the high titers are suggestive of leptospirosis. A differential diagnosis: malaria, enteric fever, chikungunya, dengue fever, hantavirus, viral hepatitis, influenza, and rickets cell fever. As we have already discussed in the previous session, like Strep typhus, it mimics all other fevers. You must have a high index of suspicion and clear-cut history of contact. Treatment prompt initiation of antibiotic therapy shortens the course and prevents the progression. Mild leptospirosis resolved without any treatment. This is the treatment chemoprophylaxis for leptospirosis in adults. The patient is having mild leptospirosis, doxycycline 100 mg BD or amoxicillin 500 mg TID or ampicillin 500 mg TID. If you think the patient is in the moderate to severe leptospirosis, penicillin 1.5 million units IM 6 hourly, which we don't use now. Ceftriaxone 1 gram IV or cefotaxime 1 gram every 6 hourly. The other thing is doxycycline 200 mg once a week for prophylaxis purpose, or azithromycin 250 mg once daily or twice a week. Prevention, there are no vaccine currently available. Short-term antibiotic prophylaxis can be used for well-defined exposures, that is doxycycline or azithromycin. Long-term antibiotic prophylaxis is ineffective. General sanitation measures and avoidance of swimming is in contaminated places. That is, you must proper sanitation measures. Do avoid outside swimming. The same take-home message for this. Adequate history of exposure is most important for diagnosis. Possibility of leptospirosis to be kept in differential diagnosis for all ectric illness. Prompt treatment can prevent life-threatening complications. Health education and awareness for prevention. So for both scrub typhus and leptospirosis, unless you suspect, you can't order for investigations and you can't think in that lines. So always bear in mind leptospirosis or scrub typhus when you see in a PU or where the other investigations are coming negative. Thank you.